In the far lands of the east, surrounded by thick forests and hills that touched the clouds, there was a village called Umuazala. It was a quiet village filled with stories, some true, others whispered. But one story stood out among them all. It was the story of a young maiden named Mesoma. Mesoma had no parents. They died when she was a baby. Some said it was sickness, others said it was fire, but no one really knew. After they were gone, no one in Umuazala wanted to take her in, so she was left at the edge of the forest. She built a small hut with her tiny hands and lived alone. The forest became her friend. She learned the secret of leaves, how to heal wounds, and she had the gift of foresight. Yes, Mesoma could see things before they happened, and this made the villagers afraid of her. Some called her strange, others called her a witch. The maidens in the village laughed at her whenever she came near the market. Children would make jest of her when she went to the stream to fetch water. Her clothes were old, her hair wild, her eyes too sharp. "Stay away from her," parents would say to their children. "She eats alone with spirits." Only one person was kind to her, Chizaram, who was the daughter of a herbalist. She sometimes brought yams and palm oil to her. They would sit and talk like sisters. Chizaram was the only friend Mesoma had. One day, as the sun set behind the tall Iroko trees, Mesoma was coming back from the stream when she heard a groan in the forest. "What is that strange sound?" she said to herself. She followed the sound and found a man lying under a tree. He was badly injured. His leg was twisted and his arm was bleeding. He looked like a servant. His clothes were dusty and he wore no fine jewelry. The moment the young man saw a young lady standing before him, he muttered deep within his breath, "Help me," and then he fainted. Mesoma hesitated because she didn't want to bring more troubles and pains to herself. But she couldn't leave him there. She pulled him to her hut with all the strength she had, cleaned his wounds, and wrapped his leg with herbs. She stayed by his side until he became conscious and could sit up. She gave him bitterleaf soup and clean water from the stream. "My name is Obidike," the young man said. "I know," Mesoma said quietly. "How did you know?" he asked curiously, as he hadn't told her before. "The trees told me. Now your health is back, you can leave," Mesoma answered and walked away coldly. This made Obidike very curious about the maiden he had just encountered. However, he picked himself up and made his way out of the forest and back to his home. From that day, the strangest thing began to happen to Mesoma. She began to have the most vivid dreams about Obidike. She would see herself and Obidike standing in a pool of clouds, holding different parts of the same piece of white linen. The first night she had the dream, Mesoma woke up suddenly in shock, with beads of sweat all over her body. "What kind of dream is this? Why am I dreaming of this young man, and who could he be?" However, the dreams kept coming and coming until she grew tired and decided to ignore them. A whole moon passed, and Mesoma continued to live her life as usual. One day, while she made a fire and cooked in front of her hut in the forest, she had an unusual visitor. It was Obidike, the stranger, who she had nursed back to health. The moment she saw him, she became cold. "Why are you here?" she asked angrily. "I came to see you," he replied. "See me for what? You should have heard that I am a witch by now. Or do you want me to bewitch you?" She spoke harshly, rising from the little stool she sat on. Truly, I have heard about you this past moon, and I have been told to keep my distance because you are a witch. What they do not know is that you truly have bewitched me, and I came here to ask you why, Obidike answered. Bewitched you? How dare you say that to me, she said firmly. I was nothing but good to you. I brought you to my hut, nursed you back to health, and shared my little food with you. And all you could tell me was that I bewitched you? You need to leave here before I do something we both would regret, Mesoma said as she turned her back and walked towards the door of her hut. I see you in my dreams, Obidike blurted out. Mesoma froze at his words. She was startled and turned back to him. What did you say? She inquired. Yes, I see us holding the same piece of white linen, he replied. I have those dreams too. I do not know what they mean. They scared me at first. I have asked the trees for interpretation, but they remained silent, Mesoma said. This is indeed strange, Obidike said as he rubbed his chin. I believe all will be revealed in good time. But for now, I brought you this. He reached into his hunter's bag and brought out a big piece of bushmeat. I brought it to show my appreciation. Maybe you can add it to your cooking and we can eat together, he said in a quirky manner. And from that day, Obidike began to visit her. Every time he came, he brought her simple gifts in his small hunter's sack. She told him about dangers before they happened. When he listened, he was saved. One time, she warned him about the trap near the river path. He told his people, and they removed it. Another time, she warned him not to eat food from a visiting trader. It was poisoned. They became close. They laughed. They shared secrets. But what Mesoma didn't know was that Obidike was no ordinary boy. He was the prince of Umuazala, the only son of King Ezugo and Queen Wanyoma. He dressed like a servant so that no one would know where he was going. Then came the season of the great Icho Umuye, the time for the prince to choose a wife. Every young maiden from the village prepared, including Chizaram, Mesoma's only friend. One day, Chizaram ran to Mesoma's hut with new beads and fine wrappers in her hands. She was excited and glowing, eager to show off the attire she intended to wear to win the prince's heart. She even rehearsed her dance steps. Wow! The moment the prince sees your costume and dance steps, he has no choice but to make you his wife, Mesoma said, cheering her friend on as Chizaram practiced her movements in front of the hut. Do not worry, my dear friend, Chizaram said with pride. The moment I become the princess of this village, I will bring you into the palace to live with me as one of my ladies in waiting. That will be such an honor, Chi, Mesoma said, smiling. Then came the day of the selection. Maidens from all the corners of the village gathered in the village square, dressed in fine wrappers and adorned in coral beads. They danced, they sang, they smiled with hopes and expectations. Chizaram danced boldly, whirling her waist in rhythm with the drums and flutes. Her movements captivated everyone except Prince Obidike. He sat on the royal stool, silent and distant. Not far away stood Mesoma, cheering her friend on as she danced. When Obidike finally rose up before the crowd, he shocked the entire village. I choose Mesoma, he declared. Gasp filled the air. The forest girl? The witch? Abomination, the elders muttered. The king and the queen were furious. "How dare you shame us this way?" the queen shouted. "She cannot be queen." "Guards!" the king shouted, rising in anger. "Go and fetch the witch." Moments later, guards stormed into the crowd, dragging a confused and frightened Mesoma forward. She stood dazed, her heart pounding in her chest. Then her eyes met Obidike's. He was dressed in full royal attire. Her face turned to one of betrayal and disbelief. Her friend, the hunter she had cared for, was the prince? The queen stepped down from her throne and screamed, "You witch! You have bewitched the prince. Release him now, or I will throw you into the dungeon for the rest of your miserable life." "I am innocent," Mesoma cried, falling to her knees. "Please have mercy, my queen." But her pleas were drowned by the roar of the angry crowd. What should have been a festival had turned into a witch hunt. "Stop!" Obidike shouted. "Everyone, stop this madness right now. I have not been bewitched. This is the woman I have chosen, and there is nothing anyone can do about it. Then she must confess or be punished," the king roared. "Guards, take her to the dungeon. No food, no water." As Mesoma was dragged away, the crowd cheered in cruel celebration. Unbeknownst to her, one pair of blazing eyes followed her intently. Chizaram's. Her anger simmered like a boiling pot. Her dreams of becoming a princess had been dashed, and she was not ready to forgive. For days, Mesoma laid in the palace dungeon, cold, dark, and forgotten. She cried through the long nights, alone with her thoughts and fears. Her body weakened, her voice faded. No one came. Then one night, a flicker of hope appeared, a familiar voice, a familiar face. "Chizaram," Mesoma whispered in relief, rushing to the bamboo bars that caged her. Stretched her trembling fingers through the gaps. "You came. Please, have you brought food? I am so hungry." But Chizaram did not smile. Her face was cold, her eyes sharp with hate. "You betrayed me," Chizaram said bitterly. "You bewitched Prince Obidike, knowing he was mine. And for this, I will deal with you." "Ah, my friend, how could you think such evil of me?" Mesoma cried, clinging to the bars. "I didn't know he was the prince. He was just a hunter to me. The same man I told you about. The same man I saved." "Liar!" Chizaram spat. "Enough of your deceit. You will suffer for this." Then she turned around and walked away into the night, leaving her former friend in tears. Meanwhile, Prince Obidike was wasting away. His strength drained quickly. He lay on his royal bed, his lips pale, his limbs stiff. He could barely eat or speak. But in his faint breath, he whispered only one name, Mesoma. The queen wept at his bedside. The king grew worried. Their son, their only son, was slipping away. "Let her be freed," Queen Nwanyoma finally said, breaking down. "If this will save him, let her stay in the palace, but only in the servants' quarters." And so, Mesoma was released. She walked into the palace again, not as a guest, not as a bride, but as a shadow. No one spoke to her. Servants stared in silence. Nobles whispered. She was the girl who lived in the dungeon, the girl who bewitched the prince. Prince Obidike, too weak to speak much, refused to choose another bride. He refused to even look at the maidens paraded before him. But he also couldn't fight his parents. His health remained fragile. Chizaram, still full of vengeance, decided she was not done yet. She approached Chioma, a cunning palace maid. Together, they plotted to frame Mesoma. "You will take the royal staff and hide it in her things. Once the king finds it, she will be banished forever," Chizaram whispered. And Chioma nodded. The trap was set. One bright morning, the palace stirred the alarm. "The royal staff is missing," a guard announced. Gasp echoed through the corridors. The staff of authority, sacred, ancient, and powerful, had vanished. The king summoned his council of elders and the village chief priests. The priest was a deeply feared and respected man. He went into seclusion to consult the gods. When he returned, his voice was grave. "The gods have spoken," he declared. "The staff is hidden in a maiden's belongings." The king ordered that every maiden and palace servant be summoned, Mesoma included. They all gathered in the courtyard, standing nervously before the king, queen, elders, and the priests. Then Chioma stepped forward, her finger pointed with righteous fury. "It was her," she shouted. "I saw Mesoma go into the king's chambers. I followed her out of curiosity and watched her stuff the staff into her clothes, those filthy rags of hers." Mesoma stood frozen. "You are not just a witch," the king roared. "You are a thief too? Guards, search her quarters. Find me that staff." The guards stomped off and returned shortly with everything Mesoma owned. They searched thoroughly in front of everyone. Nothing. Chioma's face twisted in confusion. "Search again," she cried. "It is there. I saw her." But the guards found nothing. Now the crowd was uneasy. The chief priest raised a hand and said firmly, "Search Chioma's quarters." Chioma stammered, "No, wait, that's not necessary." Too late. The guards returned with Chioma's belongings, and there, wrapped in cloth, was the missing royal staff. The courtyard exploded in gasps and murmurs. Chioma fell to her knees, trembling. "I didn't do it alone. Please, oh, it wasn't me. This was not the plan, oh." She crawled forward, grabbing the chief priest's feet. "It was Chizaram. She made me do it. She wanted Mesoma gone." "Send for Chizaram," the queen growled. Chizaram arrived at the palace courtyard, expecting good news. She believed she would finally be named the new bride. But when she entered and saw Chioma crying, when she saw Mesoma standing strong beside the king, when she saw the staff of authority in the chief's hand, her smile vanished. She froze in horror. The king did not wait. For betrayal and deceit, Chizaram and Chioma shall be banished from Umuazala. Let them never return. The guards seized them both, dragging them away. Chizaram screamed, cursing Mesoma's name, but it was too late. The truth had prevailed. With Chizaram and Chioma gone, life in the palace grew calmer. Mesoma still lived in the servants' quarters, but things had changed. The servant who once avoided her now greeted her with respect. Some even came to her quietly for herbs and healing. But one day, while she was sweeping near the palace shrine, something strange happened. Her wrapper slipped slightly off her back. the high priest, walking past, caught a glimpse of her skin and gasped. "What is that mark?" he shouted, rushing forward. There on her back was a birthmark, shaped like a circle of stars around the crescent moon. He called for the king and queen at once. The queen came running, breath caught in her chest. She stared at the mark. Her hands trembled. "Where did you get this?" she asked. "I was born with it," Mesoma replied. The king summoned the elders. Long ago, during a terrible raid, their baby girl, Princess Ifunanya, had been taken. Her body was never found, and they believed she had perished in the forest fire. But now the truth stood before them. Mesoma was their daughter, Princess Ifunanya. The queen burst into tears, rushing to hold her. The king knelt and wept, placing his hands over her head. "You are our blood," he said, "and we are sorry." Mesoma was stunned. For years she had heard whispers in the village and at the stream about a lost princess. She never imagined it was her. Then she understood the dreams, the linen cloth, the clouds, the bond with Obidike. They were siblings by blood. She broke down and cried, holding her parents and her brother. Obidike stood behind them, silent, a proud smile on his face. The girl he had once thought to marry was his sister. Their story was no longer one of romance. It was one of faith, of reunion, of destiny. Later, the elders announced that Obidike would marry a princess from the neighboring village to strengthen ties and preserve peace. Mesoma said nothing. She smiled gently. She had lost a prince, but found her family. She took her rightful place in the palace, not as a bride, but as a healer and a symbol of strength. People traveled from distant lands to seek her wisdom. Her hut by the forest was no more, but her connection to nature, her gifts, and her hearts remained unchanged. Children in Umuazala would sit beneath the trees and whisper her story. And when they asked, "How did you become a princess?" she would smile and say, "I was always a princess. I just didn't know it yet." And when the wind stirs the leaves of the great Iroko trees, the elders would say, "That is Mesoma, the girl the forest protected." Thank you for listening to my story titled The Forest Girl of Umuazala. Kindly subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Like, share, and comment the moral lesson you learned from this story. Thank you.